It's the case with all the filmmakers. We distributed a set of story topics under each of the 5 chapter headings, and we said, your film should really try to answer this question. Try to make this the answer to this question something that people can understand easily and housed within a story that will somehow entertain them. And then we let the filmmakers gravitate towards things that they were interested in. In your case, you had already been thinking about inequality and had already done some research around that.
Who was the My Little Pony fan?
That would be my 9-year-old daughter and a little bit my 14-year-old daughter too.
Very nice.
So it's constantly playing in our house, which is what led to Unbelievably Sweet Alpacas.
I think for anyone who grew up with it, it was like an instant attention getter. I remember.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the magic powers. And
It's funny, I actually don't know the show at all. So they watched it, and I was like, oh, that would be really funny to hear those characters talk about income inequality. That was basically it. So 6 Point Harness, our company, did a great job of capturing the spirit of that.
What I liked about it was, visually appealing as an art form. Looking at it, it had all the primary colors, and I liked how each little alpaca represented, a different segment of society, and how you worked them through. On each one, it was revealed at different times. What I was curious about, how when they were first approaching, they weren't aware of the differences until they got to the job. You're the daughter, you're this, and you're that, and sorry. And where'd you kind of come up with that concept that they,
Well, there was actually a documentary, I'm trying to remember what it was called, it was like about the richest building in New York City on Park Avenue.
It was called Park Avenue.
Park Avenue, yeah. And it was, what's his name, the great documentary
Alex
film?
Gibney.
Oh my God, it's so good too if you ever get a chance. And he described how the children of the super billionaires would always come through the lobby and be so friendly with the doorman. And the doorman would go, how was your soccer game? And then the doorman described how like one day when they're like 11 or 12, the light just went off. And it was like someone had told them, you're different. And they no longer connected with the doorman. And the guy was talking about how sad that is. And so I think just vaguely that was in my mind, that when you're a kid, these differences don't mean anything. And then when they become real, all of a sudden you'll notice all the alpacas start fighting with each other. They're no longer friends. I think we'll give Alex Gibney credit for that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Right. That was wonderfully put. Because when you're children, you don't see it, and then all of a sudden, it's that concept of division.
Yeah.
In that form is income inequality. It seems like in this day and age, we have the most opportunity, the most income quality, but at the same time, it's so diverse. There's such a chasm, and it's growing. What was your take on that as you were, developing, the storyline? Here we are, anyone can go to school, anyone can get a job. Life's hard, basically.
Yeah, I was shocked. I came in knowing that the U.S. had a problem with income inequality, but I didn't know just how bad it was, and that our upward mobility was so stagnant, and that it's actually not that great in the U.S. And I was shocked by the numbers about the middle class, that our middle class is almost completely evaporated. Really surprised me. So the numbers, I knew we were bad, but then when I worked with Adam Davidson and looked at the actual numbers, like Damon actually contacted us and was like, I think there was a mistake made when you said 50% of the wealth went to the top 0.1%. We're like, no, that's not a mistake. And I had the same reaction he did, which was like, that's got to be a typo. Like, that is so insane that half our wealth is going to but there are 400 individuals have as much money as the bottom 50% of our country is so mind-blowing. And I didn't know that we are, by every definition of the word in the U.S., an oligarchy. I had no idea that was the case. A strict definition of oligarchy, that is the U.S., more so than Russia, than China, than any country you can think of. So it's a little depressing, but at the same time a good opportunity to let people know about these numbers.
We wanted to ask, because you make a great point. When you read Marx and everything, it talks about the middle class can only go down the proletariat, and there's no upward mobility after that. How would you, in your opinion, kind of address that? Because you see, the daughter of the owner, she's happy, and the other one who has an education, she's all not as happy, but at least she's kind of latched onto her friend.
Bumpy, but at least she's got something.
Yeah, and she's exactly in that place. She could go down with her friend or move up, made the right steps. What's your thought on that?
Well, once again, I think the shocking thing is that the third one who went to the public school represents 80% of Americans. I think that's what's really shocking. We kind of talked about that like, is it deceiving to have the three categories? Because the truth is the poor one is most of Americans, the one who doesn't have the proper education or the opportunities. And yeah, I mean, it's something I think most people don't know. I think most people hear the term income inequality and they just hear it as a term, and I think so many things in our country have been piled into the heading of politics, and a lot of things aren't politics, and these are real numbers, real people, and I think what's exciting about this project is the chance for all of us to show that this isn't politics, this isn't boring, this is real life, this affects us more than anything. And that's why when we got the call, we were so excited about it.
Yeah. Because what I like about the story is that it forces you to think about the alpacas. Where are they going to end up? Oh, here's the Paris Hilton. And here's your political person who went to college and now is trying to do something. And here's the poor little alpaca who's probably going to end up working at Walmart and protesting.
We originally had in the script that Damon had to switch. It was that she ended up stripping at Cheetah to put herself through online college. There's a lot of stories about that out there now. The girl in Duke who's doing porn to person.
Yeah.
That's a byproduct of income inequality.
Yeah.
People can't pay for education.
Right.
And,
I went with McDonald's and the $15 thing, but we can do the strip thing. So did you see in the film to go a little further and kind of give a future story of where the characters would have ended up? Because it ends at a certain spot, kind of where it lets your mind go.
The whole idea was 5 to 8 minutes, and believe me, we could have done a 90-minute feature on this subject. It was so much fun to do, and it's so meaty. But yeah, I think a lot of these films, I know with your film, I easily could have watched another 20 minutes of your movie. It was so fascinating. Like it felt like a
so much
feature.
more.
Yeah.
I would have.
Have you considered it all?
I was, yeah. No, when I was down there in South Carolina, I was like, there's so many fascinating stories, and then just even with both of the characters that we ended up focusing on, I was like, I barely, normally I would spend so much more time, and I really wanted to hear so much more about, just more in depth about their story, but yeah.
Yeah, I could easily.
And then just following if Jack was to go to the new textile factory later, that when it opens, there's so much more that could.
I wanted to ask you, when you were talking to some of the townspeople, they were depressed because the work had left, and then they were happy that the jobs are coming back. Even showed an increase in income.
Yeah.
This is 65,000, almost 80,000.
Right.
And I was curious of what they said.
That was surprising to me as well. I didn't know that until
Do you do research?
Until actually that came out of the interviews. So.
Oh, just in conversation.
Yeah.
Wow. What I wanted to ask was, what they said privately in regards to, these were American companies and they're American workers and loyalty, and here comes Chinese. Corporations,
right.
Vastly different in their economic model, in their political stance. Any concept about that, or is it just work is work? We're glad, and we don't care where it comes from.
Well, I think for the worker, that I do think at least I think they have a doubt initially, when the second character in our film, Danny, he's the one that transitioned, right? He was an American, and I think it was hard for him in that to decide, should I transition to this Chinese-owned company? And I think there was definitely a moment of but then again, it's it is a job, and they are offering. So I think when it comes down to it, for a lot of the people that are working in these factories, it's they have a job, and they are getting paid fairly maybe even better, and they have in some cases better benefits. And I think in a lot of ways, because these companies are also just coming here and they want to do well, and they want to try to they want the employees to be happy. So I think they're trying, but But then, that's again, like, that's where I would like to follow more, that could be a later part of the story.
Because, as I was watching it, and, the imagery...
Because I'm sure there's, like, things that, there's
right.
cultural differences.
Yeah, right. Because I was looking, especially specifically Danny, because something that conjured up for my mind was the plantation system in the 1800s. Here's a plantation owner. You have all the workers, and then there's the house person. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful, and that's what he's proclaiming. And then the general people are saying, well, we're not sure. And I was curious, if they mention anything like that. He's a sellout. He's going to work for a foreign corporation, and I'm sure there was a few people that said, no matter who they are, we're not going to work for them. So I was curious about that dynamic because economy, as much as it's an ecology.
Right.
It's the working of the people and what they think. So I was curious,
Well, the thing is, they end up, once the company is actually going to start, right now, that company is, him transitioning, and a lot of the other people didn't transition with the company. But actually, it's not like they're importing Chinese workers who work in those factories. It's still going to be local people that work there. So it's just the ownership is Chinese. And in some ways, it's probably more alienating for the owner because they're the only person who's not American, So they actually have to adapt in some ways more, And actually, some of the economists that we were talking to, like Dan and Nick, they were both saying that it's actually a lot harder for the owner to, because they really have to, they want to adjust to the structure here. They really have to do all this research to figure out, how to work in America and to abide by the rules, because they have to abide by the rules here. They're not, working under the Chinese government.
Right. Yeah, it was just curious to me because it's not a cosmopolitan area. It's very Americana.
Yeah.
So I was just curious about that transition.
Right.
Well, imagine the reverse. Like you have to go work in rural China.
Yeah, you bet.
Customs and folkways of
Right,
small
and you have
villages.
to, like American companies that are going to China have to, deal with the Chinese government, which is complicated, right?
Right, yeah.
There's the movie with Michael Keaton.
Oh.
But don't you think that would have been a little different because the Japanese kind of modeled the Western ideology? Right after the war, they started producing, emulated, Western ideas where, Chinese comes from, a different political aspect.
I don't
So
think it really
Yeah, but
does,
the
though.
Chinese businesses are very much, business is business.
Very capitalistic.
Yeah, they're more capitalist than
Yeah.
America.
do you think that's just an image portrayed to the world? And as when he gets back home, now it's a different dynamic?
Well, the government is different than business in a lot of ways, and I don't think businesses necessarily want to, they're under the political system that's there, but it doesn't mean that's how they want to operate as business, they just have to deal with it, so.
Yeah, corporations aren't really nationalist.
Yeah.
Corporations don't
Yeah, I
really
mean,
have
businesses, the goal is
countries.
to make money.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because it showed in your film that the
Yeah.
But that's why it's fascinating, that series is like, well, I just think a lot of people don't realize in daily life, like actually at the Convergence
Yeah,
Q&A,
yeah.
that, when that guy was asking something about how the economy, why should we have to study the economy or
Yeah.
something, and I think Adam was like, you do not realize how every decision is actually impacted by the economy, by the economy.
Exactly.
It's just people don't realize that so much. They're not aware of it, but
Yep.
it's completely in every aspect of life.
When you get into politics, you always find yourself
Every
ending
aspect
up
of life.
back at economics. I mean, that's where politics, and you realize politics are just kind of a dressed up distraction from the real economics that are
Yeah.
underneath
Nice.
it. And that's what's so exciting about this project when we heard about it is, I just think it's crazy that we don't have economics classes in our high schools, standardized for all public schools. It's insane. And then you said the law too, I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how is it possible? And the reason we don't, obviously, is that there's a lot of forces that don't want people knowing this stuff, and they'd rather have you be a victim to your credit card rates and
Yeah,
the
that's
fact that your student
crazy.
loan rates are too high, and if you actually knew why they were that high, you'd be really mad. And so I think if anything comes of this, the idea that people could watch these films and have discussions and go, oh my God, that was really fun and entertaining, but I didn't know that. And why don't I know that?
Yeah.
Wait a
Right.
minute.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. Why am I learning volleyball in high school, but I'm not learning how, interest rates work, and I'm not learning what the Federal Reserve is, and I'm not learning all these fundamental things that you need to know.
Which are going to feed back into the political decision-making
Right.
process in terms of the election cycle, which is why we wanted to release this series ahead of the midterm elections. Because whenever you have an election cycle, all of the noise around any aspect of the economy is at a maximum decibel. And if we can send people into that process feeling a little bit more confident about their knowledge of economics, then great. And if we can spark their curiosity and let them explore other resources and discussion guides and lesson plans that we're putting together with our educational partners, then even better.
Great, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you very
very
much.
much.
Appreciate it.